And at the same time as I'm filled with a lot of joy, I'm also aware that within each one of us and around the world at this moment in time, there are pockets of incredible suffering. And our practice is a practice of engaging with what is, of exploring and experimenting with ways to apply our practice and to speak out about situations of injustice. We know that in the United States, in particular at this moment in time, but not only at this moment in time, there's incredible suffering around racial equity and racial justice. And a number of friends from the United States and around the world have asked for my thoughts on this, in this confusing moment, in this painful moment. And so I'd like to offer a few words. I've been really following my breathing today, and I've been recognizing what a privilege it is to breathe. And the 3 words spoken by George Floyd have been very present for me, as I'm sure they are for many of us. I can't breathe, is what he said. So George, my brother, I've been breathing with you. And for all people of color who haven't been able to breathe for a very long time, who've been held down and pinned to the ground by individuals and a broken system, all the time whilst begging to breathe, to just be able to breathe. It's tempting, in fact, it's too tempting to fall into the trap in these difficult situations in which calm, clarity, and compassion are desperately needed, of saying, I breathe for you. And this was the temptation that I had today when I was reflecting on this situation. And since this situation again arose, I had the temptation to say, I breathe for you, and go about my day as normal, with the idea that somehow I was breathing for, or we're breathing for, walking for, or practicing for a person, a group of people, or a situation that's somehow separate or separated from us or from me. But no, George, no, my beloved people of color, my beloved friends of color, this time I do not breathe for you. You don't need me to breathe for you. You don't need us as allies to breathe for you or to speak for you. I choose to breathe with you this time. I choose to walk with you this time. And I promise to do my work. I promise to do my best to help society to do its work so that you can breathe. Because if some of us cannot breathe, then none of us can. I promise to nurture seeds of clarity, compassion, and nonviolence so that each and every one of us will have the chance to be safe, including the police officer. Let's make no mistake, he's also a victim. A victim perhaps of fear, perhaps of prejudice, but mainly of the system. Some of us might be wondering why charging a police officer has done little to quell the rage. It seems to me that's because arresting one person without addressing the underlying systemic racism, fear, and privilege for which we're all co-responsible will not solve the issue at all. At most, it will return things to what we've described as normal, which never really was a safe place for a number of us, especially people of color, the members of the LGBTQIA communities, and so many others, the usual normal, when many of us can retreat to our living rooms and ignore the reality faced by people of color and other minorities each and every day. Dear family, I feel we need to have the courage to do our work as individuals, as families, as sanghas, and as society. Until all of us are safe, none of us really is. My beloved sister, Aphrodite Stone, once said to me very soon after Sandra Bland was arrested while driving, "You know, Phap, I used to want my boys to grow up to be doctors or lawyers. Now I just want them to come home at the end of the day alive." So if we can walk out of our house in the morning and not carry the idea that there's a very real possibility that we may not come home that evening, then that's a privilege. If we're in a situation where we can practice being beautiful, being ourselves, and not be afraid of being beaten or killed like so many of our LGBTQIA friends, then that's privilege. No, my brother George Floyd, I do not breathe for you. I do not walk for you this time. I walk with you. I breathe with you, and I promise to do my work sincerely and to invite everybody to do their work. So in this moment, from the bottom of my heart, my request is for each of us to have the courage to look deeply and to respond wholeheartedly with courage, with compassion, and with non-violence. Until all of us are safe, none of us are. In moments like these, I often turn to a book of a collection of essays called Sister Outsider by a wonderful essayist and poet called Audre Lorde. And so I opened her essay called The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action. And I encourage you to read the essay in its entirety. I just wanted to read a couple of excerpts from it this evening because she says what I'd like to say much better than I ever could. The essay itself is quite long, so I've just chosen a couple of excerpts. In becoming forcibly and essentially aware of my mortality and of what I wished and wanted for my life, however short it might be, what I most regretted were my silences. Of what had I ever been afraid? To question or to speak as I believed could have meant pain or death. But we all hurt in so many different ways all the time, and pain will either change or end. Death, on the other hand, is the final silence, and that might be coming quickly now, without regard for whether I had ever spoken what needed to be said, or had only betrayed myself into small silences while I planned someday to speak, or waited for someone else's words. And I began to recognize a source of power within myself that comes from the knowledge that while it is most desirable to not be afraid, learning to put fear into a perspective gave me great strength. I was going to die, if not sooner than later, whether or not I'd ever spoken myself. My silences had not protected me. Your silences will not protect you. But for every real word spoken, for every attempt I'd ever made to speak those truths for which I'm still seeking, I had made contact with others. What are the words you do not yet have? What do you need to say? Perhaps for some of you here today, I'm the face of one of your fears. I am myself, a Black woman warrior poet doing my work. Come to ask you, are you doing yours? And of course I'm afraid, because the transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation. And that always seems fraught with danger. In the cause of silence, each of us draws the face of their own fear, fear of contempt, fear of censure, or some judgment or recognition or annihilation. But most of all, I think we fear the visibility without which we can truly live. And that visibility, which makes us the most vulnerable, is also the source of our greatest strength. The fact that we are here and I speak these words is an attempt to break that silence and bridge some of those differences between us. For it is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence. And there are so many silences to be broken.